Good afternoon. I hope that you have been tuning in all day. We have had amazing content. We started with colorectal cancer, then we did diabetes, then we did clinical trials, and then lastly, we just did healthy eating. Because, of course, food is medicine. I've always talked about that. So now, if you've been watching me all week, you know I've been talking about National Infertility Awareness Week. And so that is what we're going to continue the conversation. I'm really excited for you to meet my guest today. But first, I need everyone to share the broadcast. Please share. Don't forget, after we're done, to go back and see some of the other content because there was an amazing app for diabetes that I'm telling you, you want to know about it if you know somebody who's diabetic and needs help. So without further ado, I'm going to bring my guest on. Good afternoon.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you so much. So my guest today is Lolly Havern, and she works with Walgreens. And in case you haven't heard the discussions this week, pharmaceuticals have a whole lot to do with fertility treatment. If you're doing IVF, if you're doing IUI, if you're freezing eggs, if you're freezing embryos, you are going to need pharmaceuticals. And Lolly's specialty at Walgreens happens to be fertility as well as oncology. But today we're discussing fertility. So, oh my God, where should we begin? Well, first, I want to explain to people because a lot of people have insurance and they're like, well, sure, I have insurance, I have medical coverage, and I also have pharmaceutical coverage. No big deal. Can you please tell us the great awakening that we all have had?
Sure, sure. I would say this is probably one of the biggest topics that we talk as pharmacists in the fertility space. But one of the things that we were discussing is, there is such a thing as medical benefits and drug benefits. And if you're not in this world, it can be very confusing to navigate. For example, when I was going through it, I had a 25,000 cap coverage for the year, but I could use that towards the medical procedures or I could use it to the drugs. And if you think about which one is more expensive, the procedures will always be more expensive. And so in my case, it was much better to pay for the medications. I say cash, but really using the discount programs that manufacturers have, and then using my insurance coverage for the medical procedures. So that's just one quick example of how it really can differ. And so you just want to make sure that you're letting the pharmacist know what type of insurance you have, that you're calling your insurance, that you're finding out all of your benefits, and that really you also look for the next year, right? So benefits change every year. They can change plans. And so understanding all of that is a journey in of itself.
Yeah. So so in case anyone didn't know already, in the US, only 3% of reproductive endocrinologists are Black. And we were lucky. We had three on this week. We had Dr. Erica Loudon on. We had Dr. Tiffany Jones. We also had Dr. Cindy Duke, my doctor. And so this, and as a Cuban woman, I know you understand, this really does affect our care. So I meant to get the link, and I know what it is. I'm going to put the link in the post. Dr. Cindy Duke's website, she has a list of all the Black female doctors, period, of most of them, but she definitely has the REIs. So if you want to check that out, I'm going to put the link in the chat, and I'll put it in the post later. But so, and in case you haven't picked up on, Black women are twice as likely to suffer from infertility, but are half as likely to access care, which is why we're doing all this information this week. So explain to people what these pharmaceuticals are that people are actually having to take.
And I just want to point out too, it also happens with Hispanic individuals. And I think there's even a couple other ones, like they're less likely to be referred. Like the doctors, for a white patient might say, oh, you should go think about your fertility. But for us, oh, you're fertile. I mean, and the Hispanic thing, like you're 16 and not pregnant, like that's weird. So I think there's all these misconceptions. And then also there's a little bit of that religion. Like I know when I was going through it, my gosh, everyone told me, just pray about it. Just pray. You'll be pregnant. Just pray. And then you kind of fall into that where like a year went by and you were just praying. And so I think there's
you don't have time. You can't. And my thing is, just like you want to say pray about it, which means obviously you must be some sort of religious person to say that to me. Faith without works is dead. So I have all the faith in the world that, I had all the faith in the world I'd become a doctor. But if I wasn't going to go to school, and I'm sure you, same thing, you had the faith that you would get you become a PharmD, but you said, wait a minute, I have to go to school and I have to study. And you didn't just sit there and wait for it to happen. And that's the thing, like, you have to take action. And the other thing, because we're not referred, that means that just because you're having your cycle every month, you don't know what's happening inside your body until you actually go to the specialist and have them get your numbers.
Well, and you were mentioning the other day, you were like, oh, knowledge is power. And I absolutely believe in that, like knowing your AMH. But then I think we need to take it a step further. Like, applied knowledge is power. Did you get that low AMH? Now go freeze your eggs. Because I think a lot of times, yeah, they get the test and then they don't do anything about it because you don't know what to do, or you don't know where to go, or you don't know your resources. So yes, knowledge is power, but then also doing something about it, because I think, yeah,
action. We got to take action. Somebody said that in the chat during one of the other parts of the summit today, and that's true. Like, you're getting this information now, put it to good use.
Yeah, and we need more representation. You know, I left the stores about 5 years ago, so I haven't been in the field in a little bit, and so now I'm mostly in these meetings. And you know, Dr. Nay, I can't tell you how many times I'm the only minority woman in the room, and we're only talking about fertility, and it, you know, affects women or people that identify as women so much more. And I'm like, why am I the only woman here?
Right. And that's the thing. It's like, oh shoot, I forget the numbers for the Black fertility doctors, but it's less than 3%, I think. And I can only imagine for Latin, Hispanic people, I'm sure it's even less than that, probably. And so it's really
matters.
Yeah, and I mean, for those that don't know, and they did explain this on Monday, but you specialize in obstetrics and gynecology, and then you do a fellowship in reproductive endocrinology and infertility, and that's how you become an REI, which is a fertility doctor. But and unfortunately, because there's so few of them, there's not one in every state even. So
yeah, I think there's 450 clinics across the entire US. But to your point, like, I think we need to start at the OBGYNs. And honestly, I have gotten so many ideas from just watching this week, because, you know, pharmacists are now starting to prescribe oral contraceptives. And I think that's a great counseling point right there. Like, let's talk about your fertility. Is this something that you want to do for 5-10 years? Do you want to get your AMH checked? Like, I think there's so much opportunity for OBGYNs, for pharmacists, to get this conversation started much, much earlier. So we're not, you know, people aren't finding out at 38 that they should have had their AMH checked.
Right. And unfortunately, that is what's happening. But we are trying to give this information so we can stop that from happening. So a lot of people, the drugs that we're taking are actual hormones, right?
Yeah. So first thing I want to start off is no two journeys are the same. I mean, they call it assisted reproductive technologies art, because it's very scientific, but I honestly feel like there's an art to it because it can be so different. So some people may start on Clomid or Letrozole, and they might add an HCG trigger shot to it. Like, it's just so different. But generally, like, the IVF cycle would start with stimulating meds, where they sort of grow the follicles, and then you would have the egg retrieval, and then you can have a transfer either immediately after the retrieval or later on if you do a frozen embryo transfer. But, you know, I think most of the specialty pharmacies with fertility are mail order. And that's another thing that I always used to get so frustrated, even when I was going through it and I was a pharmacist. Like, so many needles and syringes and not knowing which one to switch and which to mix. And all of a sudden, you know, when you have diabetes, you sort of get trained and you're dealing with it for years, right? But fertility, you may only do it 1 month, hopefully, if you're super lucky, but not enough to like really be comfortable. And I can't tell you how many patients I've had that have injected progesterone with an 18 gauge because they did right. Like, but how do you know that if you just get a box in the mail and it's all
okay? So full transparency, get a box in the mail. I used MDR Pharmacy just because that's the one that the clinic had used, and it ended up being the cheapest for me. So that's what I used. So they get the box, and I will say, just like Walgreens too, because I've been to their site as well. And actually, I got one or two drugs actually from Walgreens too. And they mailed them as well. There's a website, and you go and you can see a video of what to do and blah blah blah. So apparently, I wasn't paying attention, and I did not realize. She knows what I'm going to say. I didn't realize that the syringes there was one syringe to take the medicine out of this, and then another syringe to put it into another bottle to mix it, and then another syringe to actually shoot it into my stomach.
Right.
So I was one of those people that shot myself in the stomach with an 18 gauge
See, and
needle.
you're a medical doctor.
And
So
I'm a medical doctor. I mean, it happens. And and because I'm okay with needles, because I was a sick kid, as everyone, most people watching Black Doctor know, I have asthma. I have asthma and grew up in hospitals. I was okay, but when I tell you that needle, it took a minute for me to get it to like go in. I really was stabbing myself. Exactly, you can see it was awful.
yeah.
And then the next day I realized, and I go, oh, I wasn't supposed to. Oh okay.
See, so that's why I love. So we have 11 fertility specialized pharmacies across the country. We do have one in Chicago, and you have and that's what I used to do when I was in St. Louis. And my patients would come in, and we'd go in the counseling room, and I would label everything, and I would show them, how to inject, and which ones go in the refrigerator, and what does it feel like? Because some of them sting. I remember the first time I put one in, it stung and it got red, and I thought, oh, I'm having an allergic reaction. This is it. I'm done. And so I think having those tidbits just can make it a little bit less hard, because it's really
And
hard.
I didn't know something would sting, and something did sting, and I was like, okay, I guess that's just what's supposed to happen. Just I kept it moving. The refrigeration thing was a good piece too. But I will say, which is why, and I'm sure you agree, that it's important that you have a really great relationship with your clinic, because Dr. Cindy Duke's clinic, you just text them. I texted and was like, okay, so I'm confused. What goes in the fridge and what doesn't?
Yeah. And the pharmacist can just be like an additional support. It's just
Right.
an extension of that care team, because especially at these localized pharmacies, we work with all the clinics. So I got to know all of the protocols for my doctors nearby, so I could help out, they can
Yeah.
get busy. You know how it is.
Exactly. And that would just another part of the team would be so helpful, because I know that Cindy's clinic is Dr. Duke's clinic is inundated with questions from nervous people. And like I said, I'm a doctor, and I was sitting there to make sure, okay, did I make certain that I did this correctly? The timings were right, and it was some days that I had like 2 or 3 injections in the morning, and then another one at night. And I did mine all myself, but yeah, and it wasn't bad. It's a lot. So,
Well, I shouldn't laugh too hard, because I have my own story with it. I was on the antagonist protocol, and so I had to take ganirelix every day. And if you don't take
me
it,
too.
okay, so if you don't take it at that time, you run the risk of ovulating, and then they go to retrieval and there's nothing. I woke up at 2 a.m., like jumped out of bed. I forgot to take my ganirelix, and I couldn't remember if I did or not. And I just freaked out, and I just injected it again, because I was like, I don't know if I did or not. And then after I woke up, I realized that I had done it. And so I double dosed myself on ganirelix. But same thing, I texted my doctor, and he was like, you're fine. Now I know that you can't overdose on ganirelix. But yeah, it happens to everybody.
Yeah, and it's just so much. It's a lot of information. Um, but I'm sure that with Walgreens, even if you do mail order with Walgreens, they mailed my stuff
So
within, quickly.
that's our centralized solution called Walgreens Alliance Prime, and they actually do have a first order review where they can do a video conference just like this. So it does help. So when you get your first order, you can call them, and you can sit with a fertility nurse.
I remember that. Yes.
Yeah. And so so that's how we sort of make up for the fact that it's not our local face to face.
Yeah, and I mean, especially if you are totally not clinical, you really would appreciate somebody, even if they're on the other side of the screen. You would appreciate somebody to say, okay, yeah, that one right there is for this. Because when I tell you, this box wasn't small, and I'm sure it was a big box of drugs.
It's confusing, and like mixing, and yeah.
And I mean, a whole bunch of syringes of different sizes, and then of course I had the little pen. The ganirelix was the pen, right?
Follistim.
Yes, the little pin, and it was just like, okay. And then I had to change the amount of that too, and I was like, wait a minute, what?
Okay. The cartridges, yeah. Right. But we also can, I remember we know how much overfill there are in cartridges, so we can also figure out how to get the most drug for the least amount of money. So there's just so many little tips and tricks that pharmacists know. And so I really think it's important to let them know. And another thing that used to happen to me a lot when I was in St. Louis is patients would literally come in and buy their medications for that day. So you didn't want to buy so much that you'd have extras left over. And so literally they would just go and come in and buy it as they need it. And that's another way to save some money.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Because and I know somebody went to a clinic and they had prescribed her like this ridiculous amount, and they said, "Oh, you probably won't need it all." And I'm like, "Oh my God, do they realize that she has to pay out of pocket for this and it can't be returned? Like, don't do
Right.
that."
Yep. Yep. We hear about that all the time. And so that's a really good counseling point. Like, you don't need to buy all of this. Let's see how you do, have a couple of monitoring appointments and then keep buying as you go.
Now, how can because obviously you mentioned the discounts, so Walgreens also participates with what is it called? RX, something RX.
So there's a couple different
Okay.
programs. Yeah. So for like Follistim, we have Reunite.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. For Menopur, we have all of the Faring heart programs, including Heartbeat, which Heartbeat is actually an exclusive to Walgreens, and it's for patients that have a cancer diagnosis. And so they're able to get free medication from Faring. And so that one's a really important program. And then we also have additional things like we have CapEx loan. So if you instead of taking those like a credit card that may have a really high interest rate, you can actually just do a loan right at the pharmacy to be able to pay for the medications. So we definitely have multiple programs.
Awesome. And so if you haven't watched that, there's grant programs to try and get your fertility treatments covered. But then she's saying these are programs that would help you because I will tell you, most of those programs do not cover medication. So those programs, most of the grants, they'll cover your actual what the doctor's going to charge you for the retrievals or for the transfer or something like that, but they're not going to cover if you need an egg donor or sperm donor, and they're probably not going to cover your medications. So that's where this comes into play. You want to, just like, honestly, I will tell you, because we've been through this whole process with medications with my parents, I know that we had a medication that was like $3,000. So what did the social worker was like, go to their website. Went to the website, and sure enough, we got it knocked down. Oh my God, it was ridiculous how much. I can't remember, but it was so low that it was like, thank goodness I went to the website. They gave you some little number because, of course, we're in this digital era. They didn't need to give me a card. They sent me a text message with information that I took to the Walgreens, and they were like, zap,
Yep.
and that was it. And so this is the same thing we're saying. You can, and honestly, fertility drugs, yes, but all your medications, honestly, you should really go to the manufacturer's website and just see. And if you have a really good relationship with your pharmacist, they'll tell you, they'll say, oh, there's a discount card for that.
And the other really important piece is understanding that you should be using specialty pharmacies. Like if you go to a pharmacy down the street and try to buy some of these fertility meds, it's going to be hundreds of dollars more. And not to their own fault. They may not even realize it. It's not something that they dispense every day. So that we know that happens. And so, yeah, just understanding that you're using a fertility pharmacy especially is so important.
Yeah, you have to, because what's going to happen is, depending on the pharmacy and who's doing things, they might order those drugs for you and charge you exactly what they need to charge you for them, which is an astronomical figure because they weren't a specialty pharmacist.
Right. So I think that's it's very special to fertility. Fertility has a lot of nuances like that.
There's like a whole fertility department at the insurance company. And it's not just, it's a fertility pharmaceutical department at the insurance company that is like, talks to you about this stuff. Someone said, how can we get this for our customers where they don't have to pay out of pocket? That's not possible. I'm sorry. Because if it was as cheap as I am, I would have figured it out. Sunshine. Trust me.
Advocacy. We just need more coverage. We already got it defined as a disease, which was a step in the right direction to at least be able to get some things covered. But yeah, we're still at 19 states only that have state mandated coverage. I've seen some really good coverage just working as a pharmacist. So really, there's some companies out there that their benefits are very, very good. So definitely something to look at when you're looking for a job.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I told some people in the area in the space. I said, I am more than happy to advocate, and I'm very non-political, but I am more than happy to advocate and go to the Hill and try to get these things changed because it's totally unfair. And we hate to say it, but and I'm sure you can understand this as well, there should not be a price tag on creating a family. So, somebody who has Medicaid, Medicare, whatever, if they have fertility issues, they should be able to receive fertility treatments just like everyone else. And there are some clinics that will still treat you, by the way. So make sure that you inquire. If you need it, then you should definitely check it out. But that should not be a barrier. But it is a barrier for a lot of people still,
It is.
unfortunately.
It is. I mean, definitely not something you and I are gonna solve in this hour,
No.
but I do want to point out that there are some clinics that are doing some really lower cost IVF cycles. And so kind of almost like shopping for medication, I would say like shop for the clinics too. I know personally when I was going through it, I had PCOS. Like I didn't think that my problem was so severe that I needed a world-renowned doctor. And I wanted someone that was going to give me a hug when it didn't fail or that would let me text him with questions. And so I actually ended up going with an OBGYN and his prices were a lot lower than REI's. And so that's another option that you can just shop around and try to see who'll work with you.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, and I said you should do that with any doctor though. You should make sure you get someone that, like you said, give you a hug and somebody who's compassionate. If that's the kind of care you need. Not everybody needs that, but I need
Right.
somebody
Yeah.
who I know, just like I'm going to go to bat for my family members, I need you to go to bat for me and find those follicles and those eggs. So I knew, as a matter of fact, when I went in, I knew that we were definitely going to get 8 eggs. She said, but I'm going to try for more. She got 11. And see, that's why she's my doctor and my
Right.
friend. That's why,
No,
because
I have the same exact, and I even tell people that it's like a prom dress. Like when it fits, it fits. And I did a couple. I actually my second doctor is who like I left one and then I went back to my second, then I moved, and so I tried another one and it didn't work, and I came right back. So I'm like, there's just something there that
yeah.
he
And
always used to
I went to one clinic. And she was fully aware I was going there and was like, I'll make sure, just send me your results in the portal. When you get them in the portal, just send them over and I'll make sure everything's good. And I just didn't feel comfortable. There was a little HIPAA thing that happened in there that wasn't quite right. Like I went in the portal and somebody else's information was in the portal. So does that mean my stuff is in their portal? And I'm like, I'm not a celebrity, but I do have a show in 45,000 doctors' offices across the country. And I hadn't talked about this with anyone, but there's my first and last name in this woman's portal with all of my information.
And not only that, like if they can't do that, how are you going to keep like the
Thank
embryos?
you. And wait a minute, and couldn't even give me an apology because I know people are not perfect, but couldn't even give me an apology when it happened. I was like, no, I can't do this. This isn't gonna work
Yeah,
out
I
for
feel
me.
like you need people, like you need attention to detail when you're doing this.
Right? It's those little things. Like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so yeah, somebody said, okay, yeah, okay, making sure. If you have questions, type them in. I'm reading. So I don't know how I multitask, but somehow I do. But yeah, but I think what states are the clinics that you guys do have? I know you said Chicago.
Oh, you're gonna test me. So I have Palo Alto in California, Houston, St. Louis, Omaha, Nebraska, South Miami, Margate, Florida, Atlanta, and New York City.
Okay, in Chicago. Okay.
I think I got them all. Someone's
Well,
gonna tell
that's
me
where
I
you
was
can
wrong.
find these specialty clinics that will be right there to help you, and you don't have to worry about your stuff showing up in the mail and you just getting the surprise of your life. I mean, if you Google fertility treatments and do images, there is a lot of ladies out there that will share their journeys online, and they will show you the pictures of all the needles they used.
It is. I just think sometimes it's overwhelming if you just go to kind of any Google and you get
Yeah.
all these stories. And so that's why, we have our own videos too. And so you can definitely look at them. But we do have a centralized solution. So like I said, if you want to do the mail order, it's fine. And I
Yeah.
would just suggest that you do the first order review because I do think it can be daunting.
And I will say this also, like I said, I got one or two drugs from Walgreens. I think after the first day or the second day, they called me. We just wanted to check on you and see how you're. I was like, oh, what? Wow. Okay, yeah, I'm good.
No, I like to hear that. That's good because
Yeah,
sometimes you may have a lot of times you don't have questions that very first time, right?
right.
Like even when you're picking it up. I think even when you go to the clinic and the nurses explain everything to you, I don't know that you fully understand all of it
Which is
until you
why
get
you need to take
home.
an advocate because you usually are like blindsided with all that information.
Right. And so I think having that, 24/7 pharmacist that you can call, that you can chat with, I think is also really helpful. So it doesn't have to be in person. We can do chat, we can do phone, however you like to reach out.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And make sure you just understand. You just make sure you understand because, like we said, these things are very time sensitive. Some of them, and it's just not to be played with. I will say that obviously last year was during the pandemic, and I didn't have any problems getting my drugs overnight. Shipping was fine. Because I know that people were saying they're having a lot of problems with, you know, supply chain. And I didn't have any problems. Everything came when it was supposed to come. What was supposed to be cool was cool still when it arrived, which is important, especially when you're paying so much. You want to make sure that everything is actually going to be useful and not. And then, so I know that you guys have 24/7 support from pharmacists, including on holidays. Wow.
Yeah. So what I was going to say, so, you were lucky everything sort of went fine, but I've had patients where it's like maybe they had to take their shot at 4 a.m. because that's when it's time for the retrieval. And it's typically the HCG. It's usually what happened when I was in the pharmacy, but the vial drops and it breaks. And you only have one. Like, what do you do? And so those are the moments where it's so nice to have a Walgreens nearby. So we do, even if we don't have a fertility specialized pharmacy near you, we stock these types of products at a lot of our stores because we know these things happen. And so you call a 24-hour pharmacy and they find that product for you somewhere, somehow.
Well, that's awesome. That's good to know. Someone said, are there any OBGYN doctors in the Chicago area that also offer fertility service? I just wanted to cover that. Um, we wouldn't know that. You would have to talk to OBGYNs and see if they do. But I will tell you in Chicago, Kind Body Bios is there. And Dr. Erica Loudon that was on with us on Monday, she's one of the doctors there. Um, it just escaped me her partner's name because there's two Black women actually at Kind Body Bios in Chicago. And so definitely check them out. And kindbody.com is the website. .org is the website. So check them out and you can talk to them, but they are amazing. And it blows me away. I think the intelligence of these fertility doctors, they are all very, very bright.
In Kind Body, I mean, they'll be great. They'll be able to also tell you about some other discount benefits that they may offer. Like a lot of times you can bundle where you may pay for 3 cycles, but if you get pregnant in one, or no, you pay for 1 cycle, it's a bundle. So you
Yeah,
pay an amount of money until you have success, whether that's 1 or 3, but you pay the same amount of money. And so there's definitely ways to get creative about this. I really, I hate to think that money is what's stopping someone from
right,
starting a family. And so I just would never want that to be the barrier. You'd have to just keep going, research.
right.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
And kindbody.org, go to the website. Today is the last day to apply. They do have a grant. They're giving out, I want to say it's $50,000 grants. I could be wrong. Don't quote me. But they do have a grant and expire. I know that the application deadline is today. So if you want to
You
go
just
check that out, you need
you
to go
probably just
check
had a
that out.
whole bunch of applications going in today.
Yeah, yeah. So
That's
just
awesome.
yeah, maybe. But today is the last day. So kindbody.org. Go, 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 and check that out. If that's what you're looking into doing, go get your money now. um, but so this journey is so interesting. But where do you think when do you think we should contact the pharmacist? Like, and actually I'm saying like speak to a pharmacist.
So that's where I think the earlier the better. Like I think these 25-year-old women coming in to pick up birth control, I think we should have that conversation because we know it's not being had at OBGYNs. We've talked about that. Like they're just not asking about fertility. They're not. So, and I know it's hard because at 25, you may not be thinking about a family, but I really think it's on us as pharmacists to counsel on it. And I also think it's on patients to ask questions. But the question I would ask right away, I was on birth control since I was like from 16 to 28. Joke's on me. I didn't need it, but like, I wish I would have asked, could this affect my fertility in the future? Like, what are some of long-lasting effects of this? I was not thinking about that. And so I'm hoping to change that conversation where we are more open and realize that it could have an effect. And maybe I didn't need birth control.
Right. But you know what? You're right, because if we, so doctors, everyone knows they have a limited amount of time to see their patients. They just don't have enough time. And that's why I think the conversation is not being had so much in that office, because you have, God forbid, you got blood pressure issues we need to discuss. God forbid you have abnormal pap smear. Just there's so many things that the OBGYN has to deal with that you might have to talk about. For them to talk about this too, they just might not have time. So either you need to ask your doctor, or this is a great way, like you said, the pharmacist, if they see that this is a prescription you pick up every month. If they say, hey, by the way, I think that is a great way to also inject it into the conversation. That's why I'm trying to have the conversation here, so that moms, grandmas, aunts, cousins, godmothers, mentors, professor, whatever, can have that conversation with, younger women, so that we can make sure that we are not, oh my goodness, I let all this time pass and I didn't realize I should have done this 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Because now it's more attainable now than it was 10 years ago. It's much more attainable. And we did talk about, there are great companies, but when you're about to graduate to get a job, this is something you probably should bring up
Right.
with HR. You should say, hey, can I see a detailed benefits package?
Absolutely. No, show me your benefits. That's
Yes.
like, that should be the first question. And I think you bring up a good point though. And I think this is also education. When I was going through infertility, egg freezing was considered experimental, where it's now
That's
it's
what I'm
standard
saying. Yeah.
care. Yeah. So I think people don't understand that the success rate has gotten so much better because it used to be this experimental thing. And then also, I think a good time to talk to the pharmacist is after you've started trying and it hasn't worked. Like, it used to break my heart when I would hear that a patient's been trying for a year and a half, and they just didn't know where to go or when the insurance mandates like 12 IUIs and you're just like, what a waste. And so I think those are times too where get the pharmacist involved, because they can definitely advocate for you. They can give you options. They can tell you who to go to. They know all of the clinics in the area. So definitely an underused resource.
Now, would the pharmacist also, because what I've recently learned was that some jobs, because they don't cover it as a benefit, you have to pay up front, but then they'll reimburse you. So
Yep.
would the pharmacist write that letter and say, or sign a letter or something and saying, this is what, this person bought or whatever?
So we have a pharmacy in Florida that does that, but it's not really like on the pharmacist side. It's through almost like a PBM, if you think about it. It's like a pharmacy benefits management company.
Gotcha.
And so the patient pays upfront cash, but then they submit the receipts to this PBM that then reimburses. And so this is one of the benefits for a well-known company, and that's how they do their egg freezing. So for IVF, if you're doing the full thing, they'll cover it under their benefits. But if you're doing egg freezing, they do, I don't know why they do this thing where you pay up
Well,
front.
that's what I'm saying. So many companies do that, but I was saying is the pharmacist. So if my company does that and I need a reimbursement letter, can I come to where can I get?
It typically wouldn't come from us. It would just get uploaded to that pharmacy. Just the receipt is really all they need.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Because
I said, I just learned that the other day. I did not know that, some companies will reimburse you after you've paid up front. Something else to add, like I said, you get your benefits package, you go through it. If you have questions, you call the insurance company and say, okay, I'm reading the benefits package for such and such company, and this is what it says. Can you explain to me what all it covers? So you can have a detailed, good knowledge, because then you could say, I don't want to work here, or I do want to work here.
Right. And then also know the laws, because I think you also need to understand what the law is in your state. Or, like in my case, I worked for an Illinois company, but I wasn't in Illinois, so I didn't realize it applied to me. And so, really understanding all of that. Illinois actually is probably one of the fertility friendlier states. They
Yeah,
just
it's
passed a law.
Massachusetts and Illinois.
Yeah, they just passed a law this year where it actually included same sex couples, single women, and they took it from 12 months to 6 months. So you only had to wait 6 months instead of 12 months. So I think there's been some movement, at least in Illinois. And now the other states just need to catch up.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. It's just a
Yeah.
slow process. 19 out of 50 is really a sad number, but I mean, it is what it is. Like, what can you do? What else would you like to share with this audience today?
Nothing. I mean, I just wanted to highlight the importance of a good fertility pharmacist, and I just wanted everyone to understand that we're here. We can help you support during this journey. It is so tough. I like I said, I've been through it. I know, and I think that I wish I would have had a little bit more, like I would have been more vocal and looked for things. Like I said, I wouldn't have paid for 2 years of fertility treatment if I knew they were covered. And so
Right.
I just think just being outspoken and finding people that to trust, I think is really, really important.
Well, thank you so much, Lolly. You have been amazing, and thank you to Walgreens because I'm telling you, I I rely on Walgreens, and because Black Doctor is Chicago, we all rely on Walgreens a lot. But there are also, Walgreens is great, but there are a lot of great pharmacies that are out there that have fertility treatments. And just like she said, you shop for an REI, shop around to see what is going to be most cost effective for you, because it might be a different, might be a different pharmacy. You just never know. But you want to make sure that you definitely look at the discount programs, because and then when you look at the discount programs, you want to make sure the discount program, it'll tell you what pharmacies they work with, so you want to make certain that that is lining up with the pharmacies that are local to you or convenient for you to get your medication. So it's really important that you pay attention to that. But
And maybe
I will try and get as much information as I can, and perhaps we'll have a blog post on Black Doctor where I can put some of these links in and help you to figure out, where what is, where to find money, where to get the discounts, and all that good stuff. But thank you so much, and thank you everyone that has attended the Minority Health Summit today at blackdoctor.org. And those that are watching the replay, please enjoy. And we will see you guys soon. I will be here Thursday as usual. Thursday evening, 6 o'clock Eastern. May is Asthma and Allergy Awareness Month, so that's very important to me. And so Thursday, I'm really excited to have a guest who has created a company that is very allergen friendly. And so I can't wait for you guys to meet her. So I will see you guys next week. Bye.